There is this very specific universal human reflex. Think about what happens when you accidentally touch a hot stove.
Oh, right. You don't pause to think about it.
Exactly. You don't calculate the temperature of the burner, you don't weigh your options or consult a manual. Your hand just instantly violently recoils. It's pure unadulterated instinct.
Yeah, it's a localized survival mechanism. I mean,
Mhm.
the physical pain just demands an immediate reaction. It totally overrides any sort of conscious analytical thought.
Right. But let's look at that exact same reflex, but playing out on a massive macroeconomic scale. Because when you pull up to your local gas station, you put the nozzle in your car, and you see that the price per gallon has suddenly spiked by 50 cents. You get that exact same jolt of pain.
You really do.
And what do? We recoil, we pull out our phones, and we instantly start searching for a way out.
Modern survival mechanism right there.
Hmm.
Just attempting to research our way out of sudden financial discomfort,
So true. So today, we're going to figure out exactly what happens to the global auto market when fuel routes get choked off and that financial discomfort sets in.
which is a fascinating chain reaction.
It really is. We're pulling together a totally custom tailored stack of data today for you, the listener. We've got long-term electric vehicle sales patterns from a 2025 academic paper focusing on the Nordic countries, plus some real-time March 2026 consumer search trends from Edmunds.
And we're also bringing in some brilliant automotive analysis out of Italy.
Yes, exactly. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the hidden, highly reactive link between global oil markets, the very real pain in your wallet, and the future of what we all drive.
Because, I mean, in a world of absolute information overload,
Yeah.
just knowing what car you might want to buy is really only half the battle.
Right.
If we want to be truly well-informed, we have to look under the hood at the underlying behavioral mechanics. We need to understand why millions of people completely alter their purchasing intent at the exact same moment.
And the catalyst for that shift is happening to your wallet right now. We've been looking at this consumer search data from Edmunds, and they highlight how recent geopolitical tensions involving Iran have disrupted major global oil distribution routes.
Yeah, the supply lines got really tangled up.
Completely. And as a direct result of those bottlenecks, the national average gas price in the U.S. just jumped over 50 cents in a single month. It recently hit $3.58 a gallon.
Ouch.
Right. And that is the exact moment the macroeconomic hot stove reflex kicks in.
It's virtually instantaneous. And if we step back and look at this purely through an economic lens, setting aside the complex international politics of the events themselves, what we are observing is just a textbook supply chain shock.
Totally impartial, just looking at the numbers.
Exactly. And human behavior is incredibly predictable when faced with a sudden loss of purchasing power. The Edmunds data captures that behavioral pivot beautifully.
They really do. Their analysts looked at their internal search traffic, and near the end of February, electrified vehicles made up about 20.7% of total vehicle searches on their platform.
Okay?
But by the week of March 2nd, which was just days later, right as those pump prices were visibly climbing, that number jumped to 22.4%.
Wow.
Yeah. And here's the detail that completely reframes this. The bulk of that growth wasn't people looking for standard hybrids as some sort of half measure. It was people searching specifically for fully electric vehicles.
Which indicates a desire for total insulation from the problem rather than just, mitigation. And what's fascinating is that the Edmunds analysts point out we actually have a direct recent historical parallel for this exact trajectory.
Oh, you mean the 2022 data?
Precisely. During the early stages of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, global oil distribution faced very similar immediate disruptions. Crude prices shot up, and the cost at the local pump followed.
Right, I remember that.
And consumer behavior mirrored what we're seeing today, almost identically. Within about a month of that initial price shock, searches for electrified vehicles skyrocketed from 17.5% to 25.1% of total activity.
That is a massive jump.
It is. The mechanism is entirely consistent. International supply lines get tangled, local costs increase, and consumers immediately start hunting for an escape hatch.
I do have to push back on this phenomenon a little bit, though.
Okay, let's hear it.
Or at least I question the real intent behind those search bars. I mean, searching for a car on the internet is completely free. Actually, buying a car is one of the biggest financial commitments a household can make.
Very true.
So are people actually planning to buy these fully electric cars, or is this just like financial doom scrolling? You get a terrible $80 gas receipt, so you sit on your couch and just fantasize about never visiting a gas station again. Does web search actually translate to a physical car in a driveway?
Well, that is the multi-million-dollar question for the auto industry. And it's exactly why we need to move away from just internet search traffic and look at hard sales data. We need markets that are significantly further along the adoption curve.
Which brings us to the Nordic study.
Exactly. This is a fascinating 2025 academic paper from the IAE International Conference. They analyzed actual purchasing behavior in Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden.
And the Nordic countries give us a much clearer picture because they already have the infrastructure and the widespread adoption. They aren't just searching, they're actually buying.
Right. The researchers wanted to isolate which specific economic lever actually moves the needle on real-world localized EV sales. They really wanted to know, are consumers motivated more by the price of electricity or by the price of gasoline?
Before we get to their ultimate conclusion, I want to share a foundational statistic from their research that honestly rewired how I think about cars.
Oh, the efficiency gap.
Yes, we all generally accept that electric cars are more efficient, but the physical gap is staggering. The researchers point out that a traditional internal combustion engine vehicle operates at only about 20% efficiency.
Right. The physics of controlled mini explosions.
Exactly.
So-
Think about the implications of that for a second. 80% of the energy from the expensive gasoline you just paid for is literally lost as heat and noise. It doesn't even move the car forward.
It's just wasted.
Yeah. I mean, a gas car is basically an incredibly expensive space heater that just happens to roll down the highway. Meanwhile, EV motors operate at more than 85% efficiency. It's almost a direct energy transfer.
We get a massive difference in the underlying mechanical efficiency, which is exactly why the day-to-day operating costs diverge so sharply. But getting back to the core finding of that Nordic study, because it addresses your question about consumer intent versus doom scrolling perfectly.
Right, do they actually buy them?
They do. They found that gasoline prices have a far more statistically significant effect on actual finalized EV adoption than electricity prices do. To put a hard mathematical value on it, they calculated that a 1% increase in gasoline prices increases EV sales by 0.85%.
Okay, so it's not actually about how cheap the electricity is, it's a push versus pull effect.
Expand on how you view that dynamic.
Well, think about your own psychology when you're managing your household budget. Cheap electricity doesn't inherently pull you into a car dealership. It's a nice perk. You might think, oh, it'd be nice to save on fuel.
Sure.
But expensive gas actively pushes you out of your current traditional car. It goes back to that hot stove reflex. Are you more motivated to spend $40,000 just to save a few bucks on your monthly utility bill? Or are you motivated by the acute, immediate pain of standing in the freezing cold watching those numbers spin up to 80 bucks at the pump?
The pain is definitely the stronger motivator.
Yeah, the pain pushes you to make a major financial decision much harder than the perk pulls you.
Absolutely. Loss aversion is a remarkably powerful economic motivator. We feel the pain of a financial loss like paying a premium for a tank of gas much more acutely than we feel the joy of a potential gain like, cheaper home charging.
Right.
But I do want to touch on the mathematical methodology the researchers used to prove this because it's quite elegant, even if the terminology sounds a bit dense.
Yes, I really wanted to ask you about this. The paper says they used a two-stage least squares estimation using instrumental variables. I read that and my eyes completely glazed over.
It is a mouthful.
I need you to translate this because how do you mathematically prove it's the gas price driving the sale and not just like some local tax credit or unusually cheap local electricity making people buy these cars?
It's a great question, and we can untangle it with a pretty simple analogy.
Mm.
Imagine you're trying to figure out if playing loud music makes a restaurant more crowded.
Okay.
But there's a problem. Restaurants often turn up the music because they are crowded.
Oh, right. So the two variables are tangled up. You don't know which causes which.
Exactly. Yeah. In statistics, that messy overlap is called endogeneity. Local EV sales and local electricity prices have that exact same messy overlap. They influence each other.
Okay, so how do you filter out the noise?
You find an instrumental variable, something that affects the music volume, but definitely doesn't affect the crowd size directly. Like, say, the manager's personal shift schedule.
Okay, I'm tracking.
Right. So if the manager who loves loud music comes on shift, the music gets louder, totally regardless of the crowd. Now you can finally measure the pure effect of the music on the customers.
Oh, I see where this is going. So in the Nordic study, local electricity prices and local EV sales are tangled up like the music and the crowd.
Precisely. So the researchers used foreign energy prices as their instrumental variable. That's their manager's shift schedule. Foreign energy prices shift the local cost of gasoline, but they certainly aren't influenced by how many EVs are selling in a random town in Sweden.
That makes so much sense.
It acts as a perfect mathematical filter. It strips away all the local noise like local taxes, local grid issues, and leaves only the pure, uncontaminated consumer reaction to global crude oil shocks.
You mathematically isolate the global shock. That is brilliant. So the data definitively proves the push is real. The pain at the pump absolutely translates to actual sales, not just idle web browsing.
It does.
But here is where we hit a massive practical roadblock for the average driver. If the push is really that strong and gas is hurting wallets at $3.58 a gallon, why isn't everyone trading in their gas guzzler tomorrow morning?
Well, because the friction in the current automotive market is just intense right now. Wanting to escape a financial burden doesn't automatically grant you the capital to actually do so.
And the Edmunds data lays this friction out in brutal detail. It's not just a simple matter of cars are expensive, it's a perfect storm of macroeconomic traps.
Oh, absolutely.
First, vehicle prices surged over the last few years due to supply shortages. Second, central banks hiked interest rates to combat inflation, which made auto loans incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
But the third barrier, and I really want to pause and unpack this one, is negative equity.
Yes.
This is the invisible trapdoor for so many buyers right now.
Being entirely underwater on an existing auto loan.
Exactly. Imagine you bought a gas-powered SUV back in 2022. There were massive chip shortages globally. Dealerships had virtually no inventory, so they were slapping huge markups on everything.
Right, you paid a premium just to get a vehicle.
Yes. Now, jump forward to today. The supply chain has normalized, the used car market has corrected, and the value of that SUV you bought has just plummeted. But your loan principal hasn't dropped. You owe the bank significantly more than the vehicle is actually worth.
And that completely paralyzes your purchasing power.
Completely. Because if you try to trade that SUV in for an EV to save on gas, the bank forces you to roll that negative balance, that thousands of dollars in lost value, into a brand new loan.
And you're taking out that new loan at today's 7 or 8% interest rate.
Exactly. The gas savings you were hoping for are instantly obliterated by the massive interest payments on the new bloated loan. It's a mathematical trap.
Which forces a very large portion of the population to simply absorb the higher gasoline costs. They sit down at the kitchen table, run the numbers, and realize taking the hit at the local pump is still somehow cheaper than taking the catastrophic hit at the dealership.
And to make matters even more frustrating, automakers have essentially abandoned the budget-conscious buyer. There is a serious lack of inventory for affordable, entry-level new EVs.
It's a real gap in the market.
The Nissan Leaf and the Chevy Bolt, which were like the classic accessible entry-level options for years, are facing production delays and timeline uncertainty as their parent companies retool. And some of the newer compact models we've been promised, like the Kia EV3 and EV4, don't even have confirmed sales plans for the U.S. market yet.
The industry just pivoted heavily toward luxury, high-margin electric SUVs to offset battery development costs.
Right.
Consequently, the pipeline for affordable new EVs is effectively constricted right at the exact historical moment when consumer demand is surging due to fuel prices.
So this is the dilemma facing the average household. It feels like consumers are trapped between a rock and a hard place. The rock is expensive, volatile gasoline tied to international geopolitics, and the hard place is incredibly expensive auto loans for vehicles that barely exist in the budget tier.
It's a tough spot.
But there is a loophole here, isn't there? We aren't entirely stuck.
We aren't. And the relief valve for this entire macroeconomic pressure cooker is actually found in the secondary market. We're seeing the fallout of the initial leasing boom from a few years ago.
Oh, so the 3-year cycle is finally catching up?
Exactly. During the early wave of EV adoption, a massive percentage of those vehicles were leased rather than bought outright, primarily because consumers were wary of battery degradation and rapid technological obsolescence.
That makes sense. Nobody wanted to be stuck with old tech.
Right. Now, those 3-year leasing terms are ending. A significant wave of second-hand models is finally hitting the used market. This is gradually increasing supply and keeping prices in the used sector remarkably accessible, largely immune to those new car interest rate traps.
And the Edmunds analysts specifically point to models like the used Hyundai Ioniq 6 as a prime example of where buyers are finding highly attractive, depreciated deals right now.
I do.
And this used market loophole isn't just an American phenomenon either. Our source material from the Italian automotive analysts corroborates this exact same trend accelerating across Europe.
The used market really is becoming the primary escape hatch globally.
But the Italian analysis adds a layer to this that I think is just the ultimate financial checkmate. It's not just buying the used EV, it's pairing it with a home photovoltaic system, solar panels.
Shifting your transportation costs from a variable operating expense to a fixed capital expense.
Yes. Let's really look at the math of this because it completely changes a household's financial trajectory. If you buy an affordable used EV letting, the original owner take that massive initial depreciation hit and you charge it with energy you generate on your own roof, you are effectively locking in your fueling costs for the next 10 to 15 years.
That's huge.
You buy a depreciated asset, but you power it with a fixed cost asset. You are completely insulating yourself from whatever is happening with global oil distribution routes, supply chain shocks, or inflation.
You step entirely outside the vulnerability of the global energy market.
Hmm.
And if we connect this localized household strategy to the bigger global picture, that total insulation is exactly what many policymakers are trying to achieve on a macroeconomic scale.
Right.
The European Union, for example, has a strict zero-emission mandate for all new cars registered by 2035.
Yeah.
They want to force that insulation at the societal level.
And the Nordic study actually proves that energy pricing is a viable tool to force that transition, doesn't it?
It does. It basically proves that paying at the pump is an incredibly effective environmental policy instrument.
Wow.
The researchers calculated that because higher gas prices reliably drive EV adoption, a 1% increase in gasoline prices ultimately reduces the life cycle greenhouse gas emissions of new automobiles by 0.16%.
That's a direct measurable impact.
It is. It actively forces the national fleet to turn over faster toward lower emission vehicles.
Yeah.
In theory, a government could intentionally raise gas taxes just to accelerate their climate goals.
Using the hot stove as a tool to change behavior. But, not every country is taking that tough love approach.
No, the global strategies diverge wildly here.
Right.
While some regions lean into the push effect of high gas prices to accelerate the transition, the Edmunds report notes that countries like Japan and South Korea are taking the exact opposite route.
Really?
Yeah, they're actively introducing measures to subsidize and stabilize fossil fuel prices.
So they're essentially paying to put a glove on the consumer's hands so they don't feel the hot stove.
That's a great way to visualize it. They're prioritizing short-term household economic stability. They are shielding their citizens from the volatility of imported energy, even if that means slowing down the immediate rush toward electric alternatives.
It's a trade-off.
Is a very delicate balancing act between protecting your citizens today
Yeah.
and pushing for environmental and energy independence tomorrow.
It really is incredible how deeply connected these systems are. A supply chain disruption half a world away changes the price on a glowing sign down the street from your house.
Yeah.
That price change dictates what you type into a search bar, which dictates the used car market, which ultimately changes the entire makeup of the vehicles on our roads and the emissions in our atmosphere.
And, exploring those connections brings up a really profound question for us to consider as we look toward the next decade.
Lay it on us. What should we be thinking about?
Well, we've firmly established today that consumer behavior is incredibly tightly coupled to the shock of global oil prices. The pain at the pump dictates the pace of EV adoption. But what happens to global economics when we actually reach the tipping point?
Meaning the point where a true majority of drivers have made the switch.
Exactly. Whether through affordable used models hitting the market or widespread home solar integration, what happens when most everyday drivers are completely permanently insulated from gas prices?
Oh, wow.
How will that permanent destruction of demand alter the geopolitical leverage of oil-producing nations? When a supply chain disruption no longer causes pain at the pump for the average citizen, the entire global power dynamic fundamentally shifts.
If a stove gets hot but no one is forced to touch it anymore, does the heat even matter?
Exactly.
That is a fascinating hypothetical, and it's exactly the kind of broader systemic question we love to leave you with. We want to thank you so much for dedicating your time to this deep dive.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Taking the time to really understand the complex forces shaping our world, looking past the obvious headlines to grasp the actual mechanisms beneath them, is exactly why we put this show together for you.
Knowledge becomes truly valuable when you can see how all these disparate pieces, from complex statistical models in Nordic research to the solar panels on a neighbor's roof, connect directly to your daily life.
We designed this exploration specifically to help you stay perfectly informed without ever feeling overwhelmed by the noise. Keep questioning the things that seem obvious, keep looking for the hidden economic loopholes, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.